help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And right now, you can do just that in 604 cities around the world. 40daysforlife.com. We have the largest Lent campaign we've ever had, and we have an important topic today, an odd topic, but a big apologetic topic. And we are going to hit it hard. And that is miscarriage and abortion. There is a virus going around, and you can relax. It's not COVID. We're not doing lockdowns. Fauci didn't eat a bat and create COVID part 2. It's another virus, which is miscarriage is the same as an abortion. And you're going to lock women up for miscarriages. I wish this virus didn't exist, but it does, and it's really, really bad. So we are going to cover that today. And to do that, someone who does not have a virus right now is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins us from happy, healthy, and warm Madison, Wisconsin. Steve, happy spring.
Happy spring, Sean. As we record, I've got like 7 inches of snow just came down, and tired of shoveling. But you're right. As far as I know, I don't have a virus. I'm very happy about that.
Yes. I know you're happy about that. So I brought up Fauci. I have a controversial thing to discuss with you, but I think we have to discuss it now because the primaries are coming and the election is coming in 2024. Okay, so we have praised Donald Trump on this podcast for policy and things he certainly did. We live in a post-Roe world, and he has a lot to do with it. Ironically, he hasn't taken a lot of credit for that, which is not like him. But we've given him praise when it's due. We've criticized him. Of course, he criticized the pro-life movement a few months ago for some reason, as if he's like just trying to hand the pro-life vote to like DeSantis or someone. But today we're going to talk about Trump a little bit, but not in that context. Okay, not in people get wound up or they're either all in with Trump or they can't even like look at the guy. But I do think in these uncertain times, as we are persecuted by the DOJ, we're doing the CVS Walgreens. We have 40 Days for Life campaigns outside. The FDA doesn't make law. They don't make law. They regulate law. And now, they're basically ignoring that the Supreme Court overturned Roe, sent it back to the states so the states and the people could make law. And they're just saying, no, forget that. We're going to deregulate that pharmacies can dispense abortion pills, thus basically making CVS and Walgreens the largest abortion providers in the United States. And so this is just part of the global post-Roe reaction where the federal government is doing everything possible to cling to abortion, whether it's the Pentagon announcing that they'll pay for military abortions, as if you want to go to your captain or admiral and do that, or whether it's certainly the DOJ and the FBI targeting abortion clinics, the FBI and DOJ ignoring Jane's Revenge, which has now had over 100 attacks on pregnancy centers. All of that. Hey,
those attacks happened in the in the nighttime. They said they couldn't do anything about it if the vandalism and the arson happened at night.
Yeah, I think that that was the Joker's philosophy in the 1989 Batman, where his crimes were at night, I believe, except for one. So I guess that works. I mean, in the end, Batman got the Joker because Batman believes in justice, unlike our DOJ. But I guess that's a good philosophy for the criminals.
Mark Houck should have gone to his vigil after dark, and then he would not have been raided at gunpoint, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago on the podcast with him.
That was it. So, Steve, do you think crimes are committed at night?
You know, I would think, I'm not a criminal mastermind, Sean, but if I were, I would probably like to do my crimes under the cover of darkness. And it would seem like maybe the top law enforcement agencies in the land would perhaps be aware that might be a strategy.
I think I would do my crimes at night too if I were a criminal. So I don't know. Maybe that's just us, Steve. Maybe the FBI knows better, and they can't find these people that are on the internet taking credit for firebombing.
Who could they be?
Vandalizing pregnancy centers. Okay, so I went on that rant. I apologize. What we're going to discuss today, Steve, and I'm interested in your take on this: things that we miss about Donald Trump that aren't political. They're not. It's not like whatever, his tax cuts or his unemployment or his pro-life stance. I miss all of those, but forget all that. It's not substantive. But Trump,
the comedy.
Trump was entertaining, and if you say he wasn't, you take yourself too seriously. Maybe as seriously as you accuse Trump of taking himself. I have a little bit of a list, and I know you have a little bit of a list, but I'm just going to say, of all the things that I miss, and I don't miss some stuff about him. I'm going to start with my number one, because this is never going to happen again. And like when I think about my little kids and a president doing this and it actually working, the whole Little Rocket Man saga. I mean, we got to turn back the clock. North Korea, that was just daily liberal news, conservative news. I mean, it was North Korea. We were all going to die and Trump's crazy. And he starts in on the Little Rocket Man, and we need to roll some of these clips. But, you know, let's roll the first clip of Little Rocket Man.
And we can't have madmen out there shooting rockets all over the place. And by the way, Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago. Little Rocket Man, we're going to do it because we really have no choice.
So, Steve, the shooting rockets all over the place. It's like all over the place. It's like it's like the fireworks on the 4th of July when the kids are out there. There's just fireworks going all over the place. That's what Little Rocket Man's doing. He's shooting them all over the place. Then, Steve, my second clip is, if you go back, you know, the media's like, were you a little harsh and all that? He's like, maybe I wasn't harsh enough. Roll that.
Frankly, the people that were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough. They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years. And it's about time that somebody stuck up for the people of this country and for the people of other countries. So, if anything, maybe that statement wasn't tough enough. And we're backed by 100% by our military. We're backed by everybody. And we're backed by many other leaders. And I noticed that many senators and others today came out very much in favor of what I said. But if anything, that statement may not be tough enough.
Okay, so my older kids, I guess, were 12 or 13 when that was going on. And I mean, it is just hysterical. That's just entertaining. And it worked. It was, you know, definitely just showing strength and him backing him down. But he did the red button. My red button's bigger. It was absolutely entertaining. And I don't care if you hate Donald Trump. That was an absolute blast. It was hysterical, and it was effective. Little Rocket Man went away.
He did, and now we actually have real wars going on again. It's not so funny, unfortunately, but I think one of my favorite Trump moments was right after the inauguration. We were, of course, in Washington, D.C. for the March for Life. And I'm getting ready to go home, and I'm at the airport, and there's a little souvenir shop, and I'm going to get like a bottle of Coke or something like that. And I see in the airport souvenir shop this candy bar with Trump on it, a Trump bar. And I was like, you know what? My kids will get a kick out of this. They like the presidents, they like history. And so I bring it home, and the kids are gonna like get to enjoy that. So first of all, I should add, I thought like, okay, this will be like overpriced. It'll be like a $4.95 candy bar. And when I got to the checkout, there was no sticker on it. I said, all right, that'll be $19.95. So I paid $20 for a candy bar. By the point I got to the checkout counter, I think I was too far in that my pride wouldn't let me back out. But then I bring it home. My kids are going to split this candy bar. I'm not getting two. And John Paul at the time, my second born, he was 4 years old. And I found myself unironically scolding him at dinner saying, John Paul, if you don't eat all your peas, you're not going to get to eat your Trump bar.
No, Dad, I have to have the Trump bar. Maybe there was gold in it, Steve. That's why it was so expensive.
Little flecks of gold in it. Yeah, I don't know. It was the best candy bar. We know that. The other thing. Oh, we're recording this after I had lunch. That's not a pleasant thought.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But you know what is a pleasant and an appropriate time to bring up this Trump story is I hope everybody enjoyed the COVID press conferences, those first couple of months of the COVID crisis. And you just got to see kind of like Trump freestyle it on the microphone every day after had to listen to Fauci, had to listen to Burke, sometimes Pence talked, and then everybody was just waiting for Trump to get up there. And my favorite, as we're in this holy season of Lent, is when he got up to the podium on Good Friday, and his first words were to the media, all right, everybody, it's Good Friday. Be nice.
It's oh man,
we had a little bit of this thing that he did, like he's playing the accordion.
He did this, but I like the flatten the curve. We're gonna flatten the curve, and he just kept using his arm. It was like a wave. Of course, that was the first 2 weeks that lasted 2 years in some states. I have one early on that I think people miss, and this will never happen again, and it had never happened up to this point. And I think for Trump, it was it was just like a bodily function. He didn't even think about it. Steve, he sent back to Boeing their new proposed Air Force One. He negotiated Air Force One and knocked millions of dollars off of it. Now, number one, I mean, did Jimmy Carter even have anything to do with that? Reagan, maybe. Clinton. Who's negotiating the president's plane?
The art of the deal, baby.
And then he talked about it and said, I own planes. I know how much they cost. This is a ripoff. We're getting totally ripped off. And then we're getting ripped off on everything else. But he like got tens of millions of dollars off of the contract that Boeing sent the federal government for the new Air Force One. That was an amazing thing. The other thing that I saw him do that I thought this will never happen again is they were doing the pipeline signing to invest in the pipeline. And, it's a total media event and the press is there and they're taking photo op. And he stops and he looks up and he said, is the steel going to be made in America? And he's like, hold on. And he goes and he finds that it's not. It's not required that the steel for the pipeline be made in America. So he switched it and the guy initialed it and then they signed the final contract. Like all right there. How many jobs was that? Nobody
That's
does
incredible.
That.
No.
Nobody does that.
And what are they going to do? Like, no, we're going to pull this contract.
Out of all the phrases, I don't know what your favorite is. I was a big fan of that. I can tell you.
Oh,
that
yeah.
I can tell you. Right? Because in the debate, as if he never says anything like that he's not sure of. Like, I can tell you this. But he doesn't say, I can tell you this, or I'll tell you this. It's that I can tell you. That I can tell you. The other one that I liked is everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Nothing like I've ever seen. It's like nothing like I've ever seen it. It's like nothing like anybody's ever seen before, and that's just gold. Is I know people like you and I mean, we devoured the primaries. The ratings for the primaries were through the roof, which Trump took credit for and should have. It was accurate. But by the end of the primaries in 2015 into 2016, everybody knew what Donald Trump was going to say. Like, he still said crazy stuff, but those phrases, frankly was great. Frankly, as if he doesn't speak frankly. That's what made him so funny. Because he's like this direct, totally at times rude but effective. And so he feels the need to say frankly, like, I'm sorry this may offend you, but the guy's an idiot, frankly.
I liked when he would talk about things that were beautiful. Somebody on the internet, this kind of reminds me back when the internet was awesome, like 20 years ago. Somebody on the internet made a list of all the things that Trump called beautiful in his speeches. And it was like beautiful tax dollars, beautiful tax cuts, a big, beautiful border wall. The door on the border wall was going to be beautiful. I like that list. Yeah.
Beautiful people. You're all beautiful people. Yeah, that was a good. I didn't think about. He was obsessed with beauty, I guess one could say. Yeah,
it's a transcendental. It's a way to know the Lord.
Look at this room. It's just absolutely beautiful. You all look beautiful. So
one more I got to give here, which I liked, was it started on election night. We had that delirious night, like, oh, Hillary's going to win like 40 states or whatever. Nobody gave him a chance. And as the night went on, suddenly you realize, holy cow, Donald Trump is going to be the president of the United States of America. And he comes down at like 2:00 in the morning to give his victory speech. And he starts up, sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business.
Oh, man. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's a complicated business. Yeah.
Whenever I'm late for anything, sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business.
I think I'd say half people pick up on that because I've used that too. And they're like, oh, yeah. And, people are like, that was a great night. Definitely would want Hillary as our president. But yeah, it was. If Hillary would have gotten elected, we wouldn't be in a post-war world. Let's tell you that.
No.
Right now.
That I can tell you.
That I could. Oh, man. So it's fun. It's fun to think about those little random things that you're just never going to have with another president. And I'm sure some of the listeners are like, yeah, then that's probably a good thing. But, oh, man, it's gold. Okay. All right. Transitioning out of that. Something we definitely miss is the abortion industry being reasonable. They haven't been ever, but they continue to reach new highs. Okay, let me go back into politics, Steve. So this podcast is about the fact that they're basically saying, oh, somebody had a miscarriage and they claim to be pro-life, but they do a DNC for a miscarriage to remove the baby. They had an abortion. That's what's happening. And it's now widespread. Now, we've touched on this in the past, but it wasn't mainstream. It was like one of these stupid things that we just had to cover because it was out there. We had Dr. Haywood Robinson on the podcast explaining the obvious difference between a miscarriage and doing a DNC to remove the dead baby and going in and paying a doctor to do a DNC on your living baby so that he or she is killed. And that's called an abortion. Clearly a difference. But now it's mainstream. It is getting mainstream. We'll get into these details. But Steve, they are outwardly lying and misleading people. And it reminds me of another political election. And this drove me crazy. I didn't like Obama. I thought he was a terrible president. I thought he probably would be cool to hang out with or drink a beer with. But I wouldn't have wanted to do that anyways, just because of the abortion thing. He was the most pro-abortion president ever. And now Biden's totally.
Speaking of having a beer, hold my beer.
Yeah, no, you can't have a beer. Biden should not have access to alcohol, I think, of most Americans or any kind of drug. Okay. Obama very effectively in 2012 had the line against Mitt Romney that they used over and over again. He's a rich guy and he pays less taxes than my secretary. Remember that? I don't think you can say the word secretary anymore, but Obama used it. It was okay for him. So he's in a lower tax bracket than my secretary. He only pays 15%. All of y'all pay more. Very effective. And people are like, what? That rich guy? And of course, you and I know Mitt Romney, and Obama knows this. Mitt Romney's whole income these days is from his investments. So he pays the 15% capital gains tax. That's what he pays. So most people are not in that. They're in 20% or 25% or whatever. So it's like, he has so much money. Those are the only taxes he pays on money he invested. That money he invested and he earned over time was taxed 50% because he was so wealthy. Some years 40%, but 40 to 50%. So the government took half of his money, way more than the secretary pays or any of us. And then he invested it and he paid another 15% on the earnings. Okay. So he's at a range of like 55 to 65%, depending on what state you live in, that we have taxed the heck out of Mitt Romney. So he pays triple the taxes as the secretary, maybe 4 times the taxes as the secretary. Obama knows this, but it's such an effective line that you look at him and you say, you pay 15% taxes, which is true. Currently, he does. The secretary pays 20%, and currently he or she does. So do you remember that? And of course, it was brutal. Romney like tries to explain it, but then he just sounds like a rich guy trying to justify his tax return. So it's even worse. But the average person who knows anything about taxes knows that's total BS. The guy was like taxed outrageously his whole life. He lives off his investments now because he's smart. He saved it. And now gets 15%. We shouldn't even do that. We should just let him earn money in the stock market, but we don't. We tax it 15%. Do you remember that, Steve?
Yeah, because everyone then wanted Romney to release his taxes and then he didn't. And then finally he did and it was too late. Yeah, I remember. So Obama, I'm not like making some huge claim. Barack Obama lied to you during a political campaign. That's like saying that the sky's blue. But that's a whole new level because it's so misleading because he's basically saying Mitt Romney's a scumbag who doesn't pay taxes. And the guy's paid more taxes probably than money Obama's ever made in his entire life. And has paid 4 or 5 times the amount of taxes the average American. But that's just the political realm. That's sort of a political tax example of what we're going to cover today. Today is obviously far worse because today they're saying that you, the loving mother, you who are pro-life and suffered through the misery of a miscarriage, which Steve and I, we've both been through, and other team members at 40 Days for Life have been through, and many of y'all have been through. And there's a lot of pain. You who are suffering through that, you're a murderer. You killed your baby. You had an abortion. It is so outrageous. And you're a hypocrite because you say you're pro-life, but you had an abortion when it was you had a DNC. And Steve, I can't actually believe that this has gotten so much traction, and it's ridiculous. We have to do a podcast on it. No, I think lies have gotten so much mileage in recent years that nobody has any hesitancy about it anymore. Just like, we'll just say whatever. We'll call, as you mentioned, it worked flawlessly 10 years ago with the 2012 election. Nobody tells the truth about anything anymore. And so why not? You want to keep our abortion legal. You want to scare people. You tell them things like, women will die in the streets. You tell them that women will be locked up. You tell them that if all else fails, now you're telling them that every woman who's had a miscarriage had an abortion, or if she needed a surgery or some kind of treatment to help her complete that miscarriage, that's the same as abortion. It's not true. This all comes back to, we'll get into it a little bit, but this sort of sensational story in the media about the pro-life celebrity who had a miscarriage, suffered a miscarriage, and then for medical reasons needed to have the D&C procedure because her body did not deliver the deceased body of her child. And so, the D&C procedure can be used to treat a woman who's had a miscarriage. It can also be used to kill a baby who's living in the womb. And the abortion industry and its supporters seem to make no distinction between those two things. There's no difference whether you're removing the body of a baby who's died tragically or whether you are tragically killing that baby and removing the body in the process. It's very, very dishonest.
It is, and it's evil and it's malicious. I mean, we would never do this in another scenario. And let's look at some other scenarios. So what would happen to a police officer, Steve, if, God forbid, your spouse or your child or your friend dies in a car accident, and they call you and they they've discovered the car accident, your deceased relative or friend, and they tell you that your relative or friend killed themselves, committed suicide. Not they were hit by a drunk driver, and that they're kind of this victim and this tragedy and all those things. And suicide is a tragedy, like abortion is a tragedy. But it's totally different. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that miscarriage is completely different from an abortion. Everybody knows that having a car accident and dying, or having a heart attack and dying, is different from taking your own life. It's completely different. And they are saying they're just blatantly lying by telling people who have a miscarriage that they had an abortion. And it makes me mad. But it also shows we're just gone, baby. With I mean, what about overpopulation? What about reproductive rights? All the abortion debate, the washed up phrases that they've used: no uterus, no opinion, my body, my choice. Where is my body, my choice? Now they have to go and say that miscarriage is abortion. I mean, that's the level they've gotten to because they're so desperate. And this garbage took off post-Roe. And it's a sign that we're winning. I know we say that a lot, but it really is. Steve, no one would have said this, like, legitimately. And we're going to get to the case because it's one of the, she's married, she has a family, and she's one of the Duggars. And so they got attention because the Duggars are the Duggars. So they kind of highlight, oh, she's pro-life, but she had a miscarriage. She had a miscarriage and had to have a D&C, and it got a lot of play. They just never would have done this a year ago, Steve.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. And I think ultimately there's a reason why they're trying to mislead the public on this issue. And it's because we spent all these months and all these years hearing, if abortion gets banned, women will be dying in the streets. And we've been asking the question on this podcast and everywhere else, where are all the dead women? Where are they? We have not gotten a single report of a woman who has died as a result of an abortion ban.
Whoopi Goldberg said that we would be stepping, and she said, I remember the days, whatever that means, when we were stepping over dead women in the bathroom who were doing illegal abortions. And then we're going to go back to that. So stepping over, which I guess you're not helping them. That was the first thought that came. You didn't call the ambulance. So stepping over so she can go to the toilet. But this whole notion of, you know, and when you look at legitimate healthcare, there are people today around the world that if they don't get heart treatment, they're going to have a heart attack today. And if they don't get immediate treatment, they will die. There's some people today that if they stop taking their medication, they'll die. If they stop their chemo, they'll die. If they stop eating, they'll die. There are things that will happen. But to say that if we quit aborting, women are going to be laying in the streets, we're going to be stepping over them. I guess that doesn't speak too highly of Whoopi Goldberg or just society in general. We're stepping over them because the dead bodies are everywhere. It's absurd.
It is absurd. And I think there's a realization now that it's absurd because, again, it hasn't happened. There's not one case study that anybody can point to as to someone who has died from a lack of abortion in Texas or Louisiana or South Dakota or Idaho. It's not the case. And so now we've got this situation where this Jessa Duggar, she has a miscarriage. She tragically loses her baby in the womb, and her body does not immediately deliver that miscarried baby. This is called a missed miscarriage. If some time goes by and the body doesn't naturally deliver the remains of the miscarried baby, that's called a missed miscarriage. We've been through one in our household. I know very much about it. Jessa has a history of hemorrhaging related to obstetrical issues. And so a few weeks go by and the doctor says, you know what, we're going to recommend that you get a D&C. We're going to remove the baby, the placenta, whatever remains inside the womb. We're going to remove it to prevent you from having any issues with hemorrhaging or perhaps infection down the line as well. And so she needs to do this. It's tragic. She's devastated by it. Her family is devastated by it. Everybody who suffers a miscarriage suffers a trauma. And now the abortion industry is saying, oh, so the doctor said she needed a D&C. Otherwise, she would be at risk. So then they kind of reframe it as a quote, life-saving D&C. Well, isn't a D&C an abortion? Okay, it's a life-saving abortion. Oh, look, the pro-lifers are okay with abortion when it's their own abortion. This is what I think this is about. It's simply about trying to perpetuate and maintain a lie, which is on life support otherwise. But this lie that women die when abortion isn't legal, they're trying to keep that alive.
If this is the effort to keep it alive, we're going to win. It's going to take time, and Newsom will have to quit acting like a lunatic along with a lot of other liberal politicians, but we are going to win. If this is what they're doing, and this goes into the pound the table, they don't know what to do. And I guess part of me, Steve, I should be more compassionate. What are they supposed to say? What are they supposed to say? Yes, we know that abortion kills a baby. We know that we justify it by dehumanizing the baby, and we've killed more people than Hitler. Sorry, but that's the way it is now. I mean, I don't know how you argue for abortion. They've abandoned science. They've abandoned reason. They've abandoned God. They'll still try to tie God in, which is just awkward, even for most pro-choice people. They're like, let's just leave God out of this. But they deny all three. We have this schizophrenic relationship with the unborn. We do surgeries on unborn children. It's amazing what we can do. We stick Scott Peterson in prison for murdering his pregnant wife, second-degree murder of his son Connor. We've said this time and time again. And I don't, what are they supposed to say except Planned Parenthood has spent billions of dollars over their existence with these phrases that they just won't use. Like, leave the Duggar girl alone. She had a miscarriage. Why don't you just say we stand for reproductive rights and just go with that? I think in post-Roe America, they have finally felt they're like in the cold. The blanket of Roe was ripped off, and they're kind of sitting there, naked, and they don't know what to say. And they haven't had to say anything for 50 years because they had Roe, and it was precedent, and we're not going back. So now that's gone, and they've got to justify abortion in 50 states. And a lot of states are saying, go so crazy someplace else. So this is what we get. This is like the modern pro-abortion apologetics, is if you have a miscarriage, that's the same as having an abortion. And one of my many issues with it, Steve, is it's not that it's like bad logic. That's easy, and we're sadly used to that in our current culture. It's like the transgender thing. It's that it's dangerous because it's insulting to the people that you're saying it to. It's insulting to this woman and to all the other women who have miscarriages to say it's no different than an abortion. Just like it's insulting to a boy who thinks he's a girl to call him his girl's name. That's not who he is. He can never be a girl, ever, which is going to make his life even more difficult because the world says you are, and you became one, and this is you now. You're now Carla, and he can never be Carla. He can pretend to be Carla. He can think he's Carla. He can write Carla at the top of his homework paper, but he will never be Carla. It is impossible to change your gender. It's impossible. And so that torture that we do to the actual person by telling them, in that case, confirming their delinquency and just mental illness, but instead of helping them. And in the other case with the Duggar woman, that, you know, you thought you had a miscarriage, maybe it felt like a miscarriage, but it was an abortion. It's deliberately abusive.
And here's the proof of everything you're saying, Sean. When you talk about, look, this is a new low. They wouldn't have said this a year ago, or they wouldn't have said this 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Here's the proof of that is, you remember a few years ago when their previous president, Dr. Leana Wen, had a miscarriage and she wrote about it. I think, was it the New York Times, wrote an op-ed and she mentioned having a miscarriage, and then bam, she's fired a couple of days later. If this were the modern Planned Parenthood talking points, they wouldn't have fired her. They would have celebrated her. Oh, look, even we believe in our product abortion so much, even our own president and CEO is writing about her own abortion in the New York Times. But it wasn't the case. This is an adaptation. It's a desperation move, and it's a low one. I think it is a low thing to go after a woman who suffered a miscarriage. I know my wife's worst 2 days of her life were the days that she suffered a miscarriage, and to then be exploited for political purposes and to be attacked and to say you're a hypocrite because, oh, she's so Christian, she's pro-life, and she had an abortion. That is a low thing, and I don't judge anybody's soul, but that is just contemptible.
It is, and Steve, I'll flip it around because I respect women, and we don't cast them to hell if they have an abortion. We help them. 25% of 40 Days for Life local leaders are women who have had an abortion. One of my favorite statistics. But let's flip that, Steve. Let's say that a woman has an abortion. Do you know how degrading that is to the woman if a pro-choice person or somebody like me or you says, you didn't have an abortion, it's really no big deal. You just had a miscarriage. No, they didn't. They know they had an abortion. They're not proud of it. And if they are proud of it, they're proud of their abortion and they're shouting their abortion, like the Shout the Abortion campaign. It's not the Shout Your Miscarriage campaign. They're like, I didn't miscarry. I had an abortion. Well, it's the same procedure as if you have a miscarriage. It's basically a miscarriage. No, I had an abortion. I mean, whether they regret it or not, they don't want to be talked down to, you know, and this isn't talking down to, this is manipulation and lying and just pure malice by telling someone that they had an abortion when they miscarried. This is the will. It's just pointing back to the will, because they want to ignore the will. We talk about the science and read what to say when. It'll help you know what to say, when to say it. But this is an issue of will. This is why we're Christian. Jesus Christ is the only one that can solve the darkness in us that desires the baby to die. Wanting the baby to die is what the abortion industry thrives on. It's what they want. Maybe the baby's disabled. Maybe the mother just doesn't want him or her. Maybe the mom's poor. maybe the dad is a rapist, whatever the reason is, they desire the death of the baby. That's a sickness of the soul. That is different than wanting your baby and preparing a nursery and telling relatives you're due in October and the baby dying. That's totally different. And they want to remove the will out of the abortion debate because the abortion debate is built on the will. If we want you, you're good and you have dignity and we'll do everything to protect you. If we don't, we can discard you.
Yeah, and I think it's worth, perhaps we should back up here and provide some receipts, as the kids say. We're not just picking on some random people on Twitter who are shouting off their mouths. These are people with platforms. The Arkansas Times, this is a state where Jessa Duggar lives. Arkansas Times headline, "Healthcare for me, but not for thee. A Duggar had an abortion." The progressive online website Jezebel, which I think the name says it all, Jessica Duggar Seewald had an abortion, even if she won't say the word. Over the weekend, the evangelical Christian disclosed that her latest pregnancy ended in a DNC, which she and several media outlets framed as a miscarriage. We've got this is, and those are trash publications. Listen to this line. Philadelphia Inquirer. This is a real newspaper. In Arkansas, where they live, dead fetuses can be aborted, but not the living ones.
I mean, let me sum that up of what they want to say. You hypocrite, wannabe Christian, you're going to burn in hell with the rest of us, you sinner. I mean, they're saying to her what people accuse 40 Days for Life volunteers or pro-lifers saying out at clinics. You're going to burn in hell, you sinner. All this stuff. That's what they're doing. And the poor girl had a miscarriage. I mean, gosh, it's just so bad. Okay, are we going to get to this NYU law professor?
I think we should. Do you want to hit that?
Yeah. Here we go. This is a law professor, NYU law professor.
The best and the brightest.
Melissa Murray. Disgrace to a good Irish name. Jessa Duggar discusses her recent miscarriage, which was treated by performing a DNC, that is, an abortion. The Duggars are famously pro-life.
Yeah, this is
process to remove her poor dead baby who she wanted and is mourning. She didn't want the baby to die. The point of an abortion is that we got to kill the baby because the baby's living. And the baby will keep living until we abort it.
Well, here's a quote from another professor, Northwestern University medical professor, Dr. Lauren Stryker, said the only difference, that word only I think is pretty key here.
I'm nervous already.
The only difference between having a DNC for a spontaneous abortion, that is miscarriage, and an elective abortion is that the intact tissue from the pregnancy may still be there. The only difference.
Yeah. It's like small. It's like, you can't really tell if there's a lemon or lime in your drink. It's such a small difference.
Caffeine's a drug.
One's yellow. Yeah, caffeine's a drug. This probably came from that guy. We've discussed him on the podcast, and we discussed him in What to Say When. The caffeine is a drug guy, and he wants heroin, and cocaine and all that legalized because, hey man, Starbucks just a big drug dealer. So same thing. Having coffee, shooting up heroin, no different.
We can really dwell, and I think it's worthwhile dwelling on the absurdity of this and just how illogical it is. But I think there's also a point to be made that this is mean. It's the people who are making this argument. Some of them are driving around with their coexist bumper stickers or their love is love sign and everything is love and love trumps hate, all that sort of thing. This is mean. Here's a quote from Jessa, which I share because having been in this experience and seen my wife go through this experience, I can relate. I know exactly firsthand the same conversation was had in my household or in the hospital where we went. Jessa said, right as they were wheeling me back to the operating room, I just wanted to ask, can I please have one more ultrasound? Please, somebody check just to make sure. This is a real experience, a real conversation, and it is despicable. I feel like a broken record here because I'm angry about the disservice. Disservice is not strong enough of a word. I'm angry about the way that this is attacking women who have suffered the miscarriage. We're supposed to believe women. We're supposed to trust women. We're supposed to say that women know best. All of these sorts of things. It's just mean.
It is. I think that's why it upsets me more, because this is in a category that it's so absurd. And usually with absurd things on the podcast, or me personally for sanity reasons, you laugh at it. It deserves to be laughed at. We respect the people, but we don't respect their stupid arguments. You know, the guy that says when you wash your hands, you're aborting, you're doing abortions because you're killing the skin cells. Like, we're laughing at that guy. Like, he either believes that or he actually is trying to convince us of a lie. Either way, he's a moron. Okay. And you got to laugh at that when they're just taking themselves too seriously. You can't laugh at this because there's a victim, which is the women who are miscarrying and are being attacked. And see, that's why, going back to that significant point that you made, Steve, about Dr. Leana Wen, the doctor who was president of Planned Parenthood 1 or 2 presidents ago. They've had a revolving door. They fired Leana Wen because she wrote a heartfelt article on her miscarriage and how she mourned the baby. And I remember the late, great Sue Thayer on one of our podcasts when we discussed that. She remembers reading the op-ed. And Sue, made one of her sweet, we wouldn't say it like this, but she's like, oh, I thought that's really going to be bad. They're bored. She gonna like that. Yeah. And so we're sitting there going, they're going to can her. And then Sue's like, oh no, this is not good for her. Her just like heart went out to Leana Wen. And we're like, Leana Wen's done. There is no Leana Wen. Here's the difference between this ding dong at NYU and Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood doesn't want to get into the details of how an abortion's done. They like to avoid that. They don't want to talk about miscarriages. That was the mortal sin that Leana Wen committed. We don't talk about inside the womb. We don't talk about babies that are alive. We don't talk about babies that are dead. We talk about rights. We talk about freedom. We talk about how evil Trump is. This is where we live. Reproductive rights, abortion as health care, my body, my choice. That is Planned Parenthood's MO. That's where we live. You start getting into removing fetuses, removing babies, loss of child. Planned Parenthood want nothing to do with that, because that's gold for us. That's gold for us. A baby was there, he or she died. Could have been abortion, could have been a miscarriage, but we care because the baby was alive. And people don't sell abortions by talking about living babies, and they don't sell abortions by talking about dead babies. Those are bad areas for them. What these idiots, I don't know what else to say, liars, are saying is she lost her baby, she had a miscarriage, and she had an abortion. And I also do think it ties into their overall philosophy that pregnancy is a disease. And abortion is the solution to the disease. Even when there's a miscarriage, you need an abortion. Pregnancy is just awful. It's worse than cancer. So the problem with what I said is this is becoming mainstream. You haven't seen Planned Parenthood advocating for it, but we may be wrong. We need to watch for that, because any moment I see them, I could definitely see Alexis McGill Johnson, because she's not a good CEO for Planned Parenthood, in the opposite direction. She may be incompetent enough to support this nonsense in public. But Planned Parenthood typically doesn't want to talk about miscarriage or abortion.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, Sean, because sometimes we need to remind ourselves that the internet is not reality. This talking point and this conversation is being had on Jezebel. It's being had in the Arkansas whatever trash magazine, newspaper, weekly, whatever it is. It's being had in the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm sure it's being had all over Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But you know where I'm pretty sure this conversation is not happening is around anybody's dining room table. I don't think this conversation is being had in anybody's living room or in a coffee shop. Real people don't talk like this and they don't act like this. I think it's all a charade that takes place among the highly online people who live their lives online and they're progressive and they think of themselves as philosopher kings. I think those are the people who are having the conversation, but regular America and regular around the world are not talking this way.
I think you're wrong, Steve. I think most people think a miscarriage is the same as an abortion. Just you're way out. You got 7 inches of snow on the ground. You're starting to lose your mind. It's the same thing, Steve. It's the same. It's like, fried cheese curds and a big plate of pulled pork nachos. It's the same as eating a bowl of fresh blueberries. Same thing. Totally the same thing.
Well, here's a great line. I was coming up with all my own analogies for this comparison between miscarriage and perhaps a medically necessary DNC and the abortion of a live baby. But I couldn't come up with anything better than what John McCormick from National Review said. He said, saying that miscarriage care is the same as abortion is like saying that burying a dead child is the same as burying a child alive. The process is the same, but the moral acts could not be more different.
So true. So true. That's why I use your child was tragically killed by a drunk driver in an accident versus your child committed suicide. I mean, it is different. These are different and everyone knows it. I wonder if this gets more momentum because I don't want to pick on Generation Z, but
I do.
Okay.
You take the boomers, I'll take Z.
All right, I'll take the boomers. Yeah, we'll be grumpy old men in no time. These kids these days, they don't listen. So I think that's part of it. I could see them buying this. I could see in a TikTok world, short YouTube videos, miscarriage DNC, abortions DNC, they're all kind of different. We've talked about it. That's how they sell the chemical abortions. It's going to be like you're on your period. It's going to be like you're menstruating. It's going to feel, maybe a little discomfort, but nothing out of the ordinary. And then they go home and they freak out and they're in unbelievable pain and they pass their baby. And the first thing they say is, oh my word, that's a baby. Like I just thought it was going to be a blob. This isn't like, menstruating. So it's absolutely it's outrageous, but I could see it taking off and then them just killing it. Like Planned Parenthood finally takes over or somebody they hire all the PR people because this is what they do. They message. And there have been times that they've been very good at messaging. Very good. They got a lot of help from Bill Clinton. Safe, Legal, and Rare stole a lot of souls, I think. A lot of people went for that. A lot of Christians went for that. They bought into that BS. I don't like slavery. Just that's why we want to regulate it. Want it to be safe, legal, and rare. The slaves aren't always treated badly. All that garbage. That's safe, legal, and rare for abortion. Eventually, they're going to have to get in a room and be like, we're going to start losing like suburbia women who miscarry. We're going to start losing college women who are newlyweds and miscarry and are told they're infertile. I mean, you're just going to have, look, and we know this from the polls, and this sounds absurd because in our movement, we highlight their extremes and they highlight our extremes, which is they want to lock women up. But there are still a lot of middle of the road pro-choice people. We know because they convert. We know because they read What to Say When and have a change of mind. Or they come up during a talk. I had this happen a month ago. A young woman high school girl was taught how great abortion was in her biology class in a public school, and she was buying into it. She's Catholic, and she's like, this makes a lot of sense, and women need it. And I went and spoke to this group of kids, and she came up, she's like, I was just all a lie. And then when you said all that, it just made sense. It's what I knew in my heart. People change. There's a middle road crowd. And Steve, you can't run around and say there's no difference between abortion and miscarriage and just not make your like halfway decent abortion supporters not go, all right, we're starting to lose it here. We're starting to lose it.
Yeah, I don't know. You mentioned TikTok, and yeah, I think this stuff will make bank on TikTok and Twitter and all the social media, but the real experience doesn't match the online experience. There's got to be somebody, at least enough people with enough brain cells left to realize that this is nonsense. I think what frightens me almost more is how many I'm curious. I don't know which one I think is scarier. Are the people making this point, do they actually believe it? Because that's terrifying indictment of their intelligence. Or are they just cool with saying whatever they want to say?
No, you can't be sometimes stupid and sometimes intelligent.
But a lot of people who think they're intelligent but are not are gonna. This is what the point I think you're making. People who think they're intelligent but are not are going to be more than willing to parrot this with the notion that they are somehow enlightened for doing so.
I think the NYU lawyer is probably in that crowd. She said it's a you know, they have to remove the miscarried baby with a DNC. That's an abortion. I'm just being compassionate towards her, I guess, trying to be, because maybe she's in like I'm just like so much smarter than everybody else that I kind of have to explain this. Like, and she's probably in the crowd, it's no big deal crowd. You know, abortion is just, it's a medical procedure. It happens all the time. We use it for miscarriages. It's like, stop with all this moral crusade. It's not a big deal. And maybe that's a lack of experience with abortion. Definitely a lack of, she's never miscarried. I can't imagine a woman who miscarried believing this. I mean, think about it. I would be interested to get the most pro-abortion person, worker. This is a good question actually for like Abby Johnson. Like if we said, Abby, turn the clock back, and I think I think she would think this is absurd in 2006 when she was running Planned Parenthood. I mean, I can almost guarantee it. And Abby was like all in, right? She was the employee of the year. But Abby got to the point where she's talking women out of RU 486 because of her own personal experience with that abortion process. So I don't want to speak for her, but you know, we'll ask Ramona. But if you just turn the clock back, like what would Ramona think about this if she were still running her Planned Parenthood? We should ask her next time we have her on, because there's got to be like the abortion workers that are like, stop! Like we got to answer for this garbage when we go to Walmart. Like people are going to think we believe this because we're Planned Parenthood. And the NYU professor's like, well, what are you talking about? It is the same, you know.
There's a point that I think we need to make too, which is this isn't just dishonest. It's not just stupid. It's not just mean. There are some real dangers that come with this sort of rhetoric, namely that when you say that this is the same thing as abortion, what happens when you've got a woman in a Texas or in a Louisiana or in a pro-life state who's suffering a miscarriage and she needs to get the DNC or she needs to get the medication that will help her safely deliver the body of her child who has already died? And she's like, I don't know, I heard on the news that that's illegal in my state. This is the case where I would worry that I'm not going to make some absurd claim that we'll have to be stepping over the bodies like Whoopi Goldberg said, but it's not terribly difficult to imagine a scenario where a woman or perhaps even a healthcare provider is like, no, I'm not doing that because, you know, I read in the news that that's an abortion and I don't want to get in trouble for it. A couple of stories here.
That happened, by the way.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up. That happened in Texas. And then, of course, she was on like the New York Times and like she had to leave the state. And they went and interviewed politicians in Texas and doctors in Texas. And the doctors were like, I think today in our hospital, we did 3 or 4 of those with women that miscarried. Like, that's absurd that you can't get a DNC when you miscarry in Texas.
if you are a pro-abortion doctor and you don't care about the health and well-being of the baby or maybe the mother because you're more concerned about keeping abortion legal, to me it makes sense to say like, oh no, I'm sorry, I can't treat you, it's now illegal. That makes headlines. It wasn't just the New York Times, it was the Washington Post, it was the Guardian across the pond picking it up. It's I suppose, a helpful talking point, but I don't think there's a pro-life doctor who's refusing to provide miscarriage care. I've got to suspect if these stories are real, which I'm not willing to yet concede that these stories are true, but if they are true, I kind of suspect that it would be the pro-abortion doctors who are the ones who are saying, no, I'm not going to do that.
And by the way, Steve, it's like the opposite experience. I think our doctor is wonderful. She is super pro-life. She's great. We went to school with her at A&M. She's amazing, and she has delivered, hold on, 4 of our last 4. That was one of the most beautiful bonding experience with her is when we went in for the DNC, when we miscarried. Like, it was like, we love this woman. She's a phenomenal doctor, but this was like her shining moment because, of course, we were broken and we were saddened. And she was just so great and compassionate and held our hand through the whole deal. And the same, my father-in-law was like that. He was an OBGYN for 35 years. And, you know, because he's super pro-life, so he knows like how hard it is when these couples come in and he would have to do a DNC. It's the opposite. It's the time when doctors just exemplify all that's great about medicine in hard times, when they have to treat a patient who is not just physically hurting, but worse, emotionally hurting. And it's their time to shine. And these goofballs in the media and the Washington Post and the Guardian are like, women are dying because they can't go into the hospital. And any doctor that is, I mean, look, I know we've harped on this, and the left has just made abortion their sacrament, the public left anyways. But it's just out of control. It is out of control. I like where the debate is. I really do. I know I don't sound like it. I like that we're here. Planned Parenthood doesn't want to be here, so I want to be here. I want to be here where miscarriages and abortion are the same. I like our odds in that debate. And just in that bonding with our fellow man, you know, the human element. That guy thinks an abortion is the same as miscarriage. You may not like 40 Days for Life. You may not like the pro-life movement. You may not like me. I understand good reasons for all those. But, you know, maybe we're not your cup of tea. But that guy thinks he's from Mars. You know, he actually thinks he is from Mars. You know, I mean, it's just so crazy that I don't mind where the debate is.
No, I think you're right. And I think you're also right, the point that you made about the bedside manner. I wrote about this quite a bit in detail in my book, This Is When We Begin to Fight, because we had sort of the dueling experiences. Our doctor, great pro-life doctor, we did a mass and we did a burial for our baby, and he was there with us, and it was beautiful. And you know, the miscarriage, the same thing that, you know, my wife opted not to go in and have the DNC. The doctor said, if this or this happens, you need to come in and you need to have it. But otherwise, I'm content for you to wait it out. And it turned out we did have, you know, some minor complications, had to go into the hospital. And I remember some goofball who worked for the hospital. I mean, they talk about bedside manner and how do you treat your patients? And they're talking down to my wife about like, oh, you know, we might have to scrape the products of conception. Like, wait, this is how you're talking.
Oh,
my wife would like she's fading, you know, kind of fast. She's very weak, blood loss. And she's like, you're talking about my baby. Powerful and poignant moments. But these are moments where I think we need some human formation too in the medical field. They can learn the best science. They can do their robotic surgeries. They can do everything else. They need to start to recognize the human component of what miscarriage is and frankly, what abortion is.
Yeah. And I forgot about that. And I'm sorry y'all had to go through that. And like I mentioned earlier, it should be the opposite, Steve. I mean, Laura should be talking about just how unbelievable the nurses were. And there's just a basic rule, which is when somebody's going through something and they seem upset, don't say anything. like say something nice or supportive, or don't say anything. It's just the classic grandma thing. Like, shut up. We actually don't need to hear you talk right now. So there's that part, but ours was, as I mentioned, the opposite. It was in, the nurses, and this was a pro-life OBGYN, medical center in Houston that we're very grateful to have. But, they were just so great. All of the nurses, the lady answering the phone, we called and said, hey, we think this is happening. And we did have to go in, unfortunately. But, that whole process there was a lot of beauty to it, and a lot of love, and something I'll always be grateful for. And I know other people, you mentioned yours, but we've heard some horror stories of people, it's easy to harp on the nurses, harp on the doctors. I think we do it too much, actually. But sometimes they deserve it. And, but yeah, it's one of these things. It's really their time to shine. By the way, let's close this podcast out, Steve, because this is a topic that I think there's two sides of it. We had to highlight the absurdity part, which I hope we did well for you, the viewer or the listener. And then also just a lot of people have miscarried. So I want to recommend Steve's book. This is When We Begin to Fight. It's a great book. It's a great book if you've had a miscarriage, for sure. But it's a great book if just on leadership, and how Steve ended up at 40 Days for Life, which is actually kind of funny. So, we haven't pushed that book in a while, and I noticed, look, it's on Steve's desk. It's actually in front of this book that I wrote with Steve. Isn't that ironic? So you put your book that you wrote. Okay. So you're basically saying
this one's a little flimsier. It's going to fall. See, that's how it works. It's
not that you think that your book is better than our book. It's not that.
Right.
Such a statement would, of course, be absurd. So, okay. But not as absurd as saying abortion is a miscarriage. So yeah, go to 40 Days for, you can get it on Amazon. Go to 40 Days for Life. 40 Days, go to our store, 40 Days for Life gear, 40daysforlife.com/store, and pick up a section. Because you get into all this, Steve, and there's a lot of technicalities, and it's just a great story. And of course, who doesn't like hearing about Steve and why Steve is so pro-life, and why baseball is such a large part of his life. You'll get it all in that.
Yeah, I had to offset the ballpark stuff with the pro-life stuff, so we got it. And Sean, I'll just say, sorry, go ahead.
I know you're about to comment on spring training.
No, I was just about to say, sometimes I jot down a couple of notes of things as we take the podcast. And right now, all I have in my notepad is Rocket Man, Trump.
Little Rocket Man. So, oh man, if you didn't laugh at that kind of stuff, if your hatred for Donald Trump was so intense that you couldn't laugh at the Little Rocket Man thing, I mean, it's you gotta. I think we need to laugh at our politicians a lot, but it's just that was gold. Frankly, Steve, that was gold. So that I can tell you.
That I can tell you.
Everybody knows it. All right, please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.